This is a Saw film, so first things first, the traps. How are they? The first few were gruesome, absolutely. The one that I squirmed at the most was the one with the guy doing brain surgery on himself. Yeah, when he's pulling brain matter out of his own head. Did not like that. I liked it, but I didn't like it. But then the last 2 or 3 traps were kind of underwhelming compared to the brutality of the first couple. They just seemed a bit tame and not that hardcore and just generally not that entertaining to watch the people go through. I will give them credit for at least trying to put a somewhat decent story around the traps, and it wasn't just all about the gore and all about the blood and whatnot. They were actually trying to tell a story around the traps. It's just the story they decided to try and tell I thought was quite lame. At first, when John Kramer is being treated by these doctors, you are kind of on board with the story and you do understand where John Kramer's coming from in testing these latest batch of victims. But the thing that kind of ruined it for me is when all the victims wake up in the warehouse and like, oh my god, we're all trapped and whatnot, John Kramer just walks out in front of them and like just shows his face to them all, and I just didn't really like that decision. I was thinking back to the original Saw with Cary Elwes and Lee Whannell's characters. They wake up and Cary Elwes deduces that it's the Jigsaw killer, but they don't know it's John Kramer. They don't know it's the dude lying in front of them on the bathroom floor, and they have to reflect and think about why they're there. What are the choices that they've made that have led them to being in that situation? But the victims in Saw 10 just don't have that same moral quandary because they wake up and John Kramer greets them immediately. I think it would have been a lot better if John Kramer just kind of stayed in the shadows and watched his game unfold and tried to see if the actual victims could deduce what they did wrong that led them there. It just would have made the plot a little bit more interesting. But as it stands, the victims wake up, they find out it's John Kramer, and then we're pretty much just spending the rest of the film just watching it happen. They're just kind of waiting for the next trap. And in between traps, it gets quite boring, I'm not going to lie to you, with John Kramer and the Amanda character just sitting around talking about stuff and waiting for the next trap to happen, and yeah, there's just not much entertainment value outside of the first 2 or 3 traps. I feel like they tried a bit too hard to make John Kramer the good guy in this film, whereas in the previous ones he was clearly the villain. Yes, he was a serial killer with a moral code and a philosophical reasoning and agenda for why he was putting people through these games and traps, but he was still a guy who kidnapped and tortured people, sometimes to death. But in this one, they present him as this frail old man, which I know he's dying of a brain tumour before you chime in. And towards the end of the film, he just starts saying and doing things, especially with this kid character, that the John Kramer of the first Saw film would never have done. And then in the third act, and mild spoilers for this one, just very, very mild though, it's Saw, who cares? One of the victims kind of starts embracing the villainy of the whole situation, the scam and being proud of it, almost to a cartoonish degree, and you kind of start seeing the bad performance that they're giving when they're doing it, very much depicting them as the villain of the film and John Kramer as the good guy. I just didn't get on board with it. The story and everything they tried doing with it, again, I just found really lame. And I know some people say, why do you care about the story in a Saw film? Because that's what they put forward the most in Saw 10, is the story. And it was lame, so therefore the film to me was also lame.